Welcome back. Elinor Robin with A Friendly Divorce here at the Gainesville podcast studio with my friend and colleague, Nehemiah Harmon. And we are joined today by two guests. We have Craig Wilburn and Linda Rocha, both with, I'm going to say it right, I'm going to look at the paper so I get the whole name right, Team Dynamo, Keller Williams Realty, and they are located here in Gainesville, Florida. But what we are going to talk about today applies to you and your house, no matter where you live. We are really today going to address the address. So, Linda, Craig, thank you for being here with us today. Yeah. And we have a lot of things to talk about because when people get divorced, the house is often the biggest hurdle, the biggest nut that they have to crack. Not only do they have to figure out the current house, but then they have to figure out their new living situation. So often we're talking about 3 houses at the time of divorce. So, there's a lot to be decided. When someone is getting divorced and they know they're going to sell their house, when is the best time to sell a house?
Yeah, so I would probably reframe that question just slightly, and I would say the best time to have the conversation around whether it's the right time to sell the house is as soon as you know that the house is no longer going to be a combined asset. So when both parties decide, because sometimes somebody might say, you know what, I'm going to stay in the house and you're going to, go somewhere else. And so in that instance, there's not going to be any house sale per se.
Yes.
But if it is decided between the two parties that, it is in their best interest to actually, liquidate that asset and then go in their separate ways, then I would say as soon as that decision is made, it's time to have a conversation with a real estate professional. Is there
any time of the year that's better than others?
That's so funny. We get asked that question, Linda, all the time?
All the time.
When's the best time to sell the house?
Somebody says to me, when is the best time to buy or sell? And I said, well, when you've asked that question, that's the time. Once those words have come out of your mouth, that's usually the best time for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to time the, time gas prices or the stock market or whatever. I mean, you just don't ever know. So now, in general, if we talk from like a 30,000-foot view, in this market in Gainesville, Florida, what we do know is historically speaking, and this is no absolutes, but historically speaking, we sell more real estate in the springtime. Okay, so if I were, forced to answer the question and had to give an answer that I couldn't really stand behind, but had to give an answer,
right,
I would say, well, the springtime is really not a bad time. Now, but to specify that some more, for more clarity, the best time to really sell a house is when the home that you have for sale, there's not a lot of competition for that product. That's really the best time to sell a house, because it could be spring, but if you're competing with 100 other homes that are like yours, it might not be the best time to sell the house, right?
Yes. So that's an interesting point, because once, many years ago, we were selling a house, and it was, let's say, like right before Thanksgiving. And we were thinking, like everybody else, we'll wait to list the house until January 1st, because that's what everybody does. And a realtor told us, we were in South Florida at the time, a realtor told us, no, list it now, because over Thanksgiving and Christmas, the only people who are looking for houses are real buyers. That you're not going to be, inundated with the make-believe, with the lookers. You're going to get buyers. And that's what we did. And the house sold. So
there is some thought process, too, that around the holidays, any holiday that a family gathers together, sometimes that conversation is brought up at a holiday. They see mom is getting older. It's hard for her to get around this kitchen. You take a look around. And that conversation does come up at holidays. The family is all together.
Yes.
So it's you instead of saying, let's meet and talk about this, everybody's there and they have a visual of what's happening. So that conversation does come up a lot at holidays. So it's not something to put off again. like you said, put it up when you have that conversation.
That's
it's time.
the time. Okay. So, well, so, all right, I know I'm going to put my house up for sale. Okay. What are the most important things I should do to my house before I put it up for sale?
Yeah.
You're the one on this.
So one of the things that we talk about is this: is only at any given time, okay, when we're looking at the market, the real estate market at any given time, there's only two types of homes on the market. Is the homes on the market that people buy. That's
Yes.
one type of house.
Yes.
And then there's the house that people use to justify the one that they buy.
Okay.
Okay. So you have to decide which one do you want to be, okay, and on any given day of the market. So there are some things that people are going to process in their minds psychologically when they're making a buying decision. So doing a thorough, widespread analysis of the market, and I'm not talking about a CMA. I mean, just really looking at understanding how people make buying decisions. So how does any buyer make a buying decision? There's three things that all buyers are really considering in their mind when they're making a decision. Number one is the location of the property. You know, how appealing is it? How much desirability is around the location of the property? The second thing people look at is how nice is the house, the cosmetic appeal. Does the house move me emotionally? Okay, so, you know, what we say in our world, Lynn and I will say, you know, logic makes you think, emotions make you act. And so if we can get someone into an emotional state when they come to see your house, they're very probable they'll make a decision to take action and buy the property. Then the third thing that people are judging for is what I said before about the two types of houses. And, you know, what's the competition look like? So, you know, some people say, well, should I put new countertops in? Should I redo the floor? Should I paint? I don't know. We have to look at all the competition surrounding your house and then decide at that time what things we need to do to position your house to be the best house that people will actually choose to buy.
So it's really on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely. It's customized. Every single appointment that we go on is highly customized for that time of the year, the house, the location. I mean, everything is very highly customized.
There are some instances where you walk in and you say, that needs to be fixed.
Sure.
You know, there are instances like that. And they say, well, I was thinking about putting in a wine cooler and this. That doesn't need to be done. You know, that's not going to add. There are some things that add value, and there's some things that are just not going to add value. And there's some things that need to be done.
Yeah, repairs like deferred maintenance and things of that nature should also be addressed, always be addressed.
I have walked in houses that smell terrible.
Yeah, it's no good.
And it's
That's got to go.
That's
they
a
have
biggie.
to figure it out. Like, how can you try to sell a house when it smells like that?
They may not smell it.
Yeah, they don't, right? Because they are actually
Obviously.
used to you know, when you're living in a house for a long time, you get very used to what it looks like. You get very used to what it smells like. You get very used to the temperature inside the house. And so having a third party come in, even when I sold my own house, like when I go to sell my own house,
Yes.
I call about 4 or 5 of my real estate friends to come by my house. After I get it right, I invite them to come by and look at it and tell me what I still need to do.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm so used to seeing everything that I'm going to think everything's perfect.
Yeah. That's a really good idea when people know they're going to sell their house. Bring in friends to
Yes.
look and say, give me, you know, your honest feedback.
Yeah.
Tell me what is it that really needs to be.
And that's where having a realtor
A
comes
realtor
in.
becomes the honest
Professional.
friend.
Well,
Yes.
and they're also professional. This is what they're there for. They're there to look out for your best interests.
And the friends often won't tell you the truth.
Sometimes they won't.
They're embarrassed to do
It's like,
that.
why didn't you tell me 10 years ago it smelled? Like, you're telling me now that I'm getting rid of it? You know, so yeah, sometimes it is best to have an unbiased third-party professional.
Definitely. And on those lines, you have taught me something that I knew nothing about, and you're going to tell me if I called the wrong name. The net sheet.
When you're all sitting down and they're sitting with you and you're talking about, you know, they say, well, if we sell the house, what are we going to walk away with? And that's always the very first question. And you want to see numbers. So that's where a professional realtor comes in, and they run those numbers. They find out the mortgage that needs to be paid off, the prepaid taxes, whatever, county fees or whatever's outstanding, liens, whatever. They do a sheet called a net sheet, and that will give you the bottom approximate numbers. These numbers change.
Right, but in a divorce, that number is so important because people want to know, what are we going to have so that we can go off and now buy 2 other properties. Hopefully they'll do the wise thing and buy 2 smaller properties, even though sometimes they don't. They think they, can afford the same house that they could afford previously. Mm-hmm. And the math is just not there.
Expectations.
Yes. So a realtor, you could come in and do this evaluation for people.
Oh, yes.
Give them the net sheet so that they can have a really good idea of what they're going to walk away with.
Yeah, that's actually how we close that part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. So after we, go through look at the house, look at all the numbers, go through the market analysis, review all the strategy for selling, all the things that we do on the appointment.
Yes.
The last thing we do is we break out the net sheet. Okay, because now we have clarity. So somebody might say, we were here in this office and someone says, hey, we might want to sell the building, right? So what is this worth?
Yes.
Oh, no, we got to do a lot of research. We can't just flippantly come up with a number or an answer, So it is a process of that. But we end that conversation with that. That is at the end of the day, that is the most important thing that client needs to know is what should I expect to have happen? Now, ultimately, nobody ever knows what a house is going to sell for. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows.
Right.
Okay. We're just inferring based off of past experience, current market data, everything else. But ultimately, we have to get it on the market. The buyers will tell us what it's worth because every house only has one value. And that's what a buyer is willing to pay.
Yeah.
Period. At a moment in time.
Right.
And that changes and is subjective depending on who the buyer is. Right. We can tell you so many stories about homes that one buyer came and said, I'm willing to pay this low number. And, and then, we didn't sell it. And then the week later, another buyer comes in and wants to pay 20% more, right? For the same exact house. It's so subjective. So you never know until the people show up.
That's interesting because a friend of mine recently sold her house and left town, and she had the house appraised before she listed it. And ultimately, the appraiser never walked in the house. And it just so happens that she had she sold it, an amazing kitchen. A kitchen like I really have not seen many kitchens like her kitchen. It was really, really well done. And, in this location where we live, the houses were mostly built in the 80s. So here you have this house that was built in the 80s. It has this phenomenal kitchen. And she says the appraiser only walked in to pick up the check. But he did the appraisal without looking at the house. Sure. How does that happen?
Sure. So have you ever heard of an online company called Zillow?
Yes. Yeah. Well, she has an expression about that she says at meetings.
What do I say at every meeting?
She says Zillow, the A in Zillow is for accurate.
There you go. That is what I close every meeting for.
No A in Zillow, right?
Oh, wait, are we going to get in trouble?
Well,
Are they going to come after us? Oh, wait, there you have.
I think it's okay.
I think we're okay.
So it's interesting because, the one thing that we learned, yes, you cannot accurately, again, I'm glad you brought up appraisals because we often get asked, before we go on appointment, should we have the house appraised?
Right.
And then my response to that is always, why would you want to do that? And they say, oh, because I want to find out what the house is worth. And I said, oh, I get it. So you think appraisals have to do with what homes are worth. And I said, let me help you understand something. Appraisals have nothing to do with market value. And they go, huh? Like what? Like, how could you even blasphemy? You can't say that.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, I can. And I do all the time.
Experience.
Appraisals have nothing to do with market value. I wish they did. It'd be so easy because all we'd have to do
is call appraisal
every time. So when you call and said, I want to sell my house, I go, great. I'll call my friend ABC Appraisal Company. They come out, appraise your house. We take the appraisal value. We put it on the kitchen table. And when we show the house, people come and they buy the house for exactly what that number says. But unfortunately, it does not work that way. the purpose of an appraisal is not to determine market value. The purpose of an appraisal is to help a lender ensure themselves of safety if they're going to give you money to borrow to buy that property.
Yeah.
So the appraiser's job is to protect the interest of the bank. So we do a lot of work also with relocation. So we have companies that are, relocating people from one state to another state. And so oftentimes in those situations, they will require that homeowner to get 3 appraisals from 3 different appraisers before the house goes on the market, because the company is trying to determine how should we list the property. I can tell you invariably, if I get 3 appraisers to come out and appraise one property, I will get 3 varying different numbers. Okay. And it could range. We had a property, that was probably, I think the market value for that house, based on my estimation, was about $475,000 to $500,000. Okay. And when the 3 appraisers came out, one appraiser appraised the property for $425,000, one appraiser for $485,000, one appraiser for $515,000. Same house. And so, you go, well, what do we do with this? And I says, well, the appraisers are there because that's what the company is requiring. Right. But if you want to decide how to sell your house and what to sell your house for, you want to listen to us. I'm going to teach you how. So what we do, we spend a lot of time with our sellers, teaching them and educating them on the market. We never even give our sellers a price for their house. We don't tell them how to price their house. We educate them at the appointment how to look at the market value. And at the end of that process, we ask them, so now that you understand the market, what do you think somebody will pay for the house? And they will almost in every instance get the number right. And then we go, we agree. And then that's how we strategize on how to position the house on price.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how little people often know. Like sometimes people will tell me the value of the house is what it says on the property appraiser.
Oh, geez.
And it's like, no, that's, the property appraiser is not telling you what your house is worth. It's like,
no.
But they think it's.
Right. Well, and again,
it's a conversation.
Yes, it is. These are all reasonable. And again, none of these thoughts that people say are unreasonable. These are all reasonable things if you don't know. Okay.
Yes.
And so we always appreciate the opportunity to be able to help educate, the consumer past what they don't know.
Yes.
I am an expert in real estate in Gainesville, Florida.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you about real estate in Savannah, Georgia. I couldn't tell you anything about that.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you about Miami. I couldn't tell you about, but as far as Gainesville, Florida goes, I can tell you all about that. And so I know that, we help people understand that property appraisers, that's the taxable value on the house. And hey, by the way, you want that number to be as low as possible.
Yes.
You don't want that number to be high at all.
And another thing, too, when you're asking people about the price of the house and the value of the house in a divorce.
Yes.
Both parties are very emotionally vested in the house.
Yes.
And it's just not a financial deal. When you've got a happy people selling their house because they're going to move on into another era of their life, it's a different mindset. With people they're going through this huge life change.
Yes.
And it's traumatic, and it's and any big life change is traumatic, whether it be good or bad. A wedding is traumatic, planning a wedding, having a birth of a child. Now, in the other end of the spectrum, doing all those things in reverse is very traumatic.
It is.
So they're emotionally vested in the house, so you can't say to somebody, well, this place that you gave birth to your children, that you painted that mural on the wall, that you marked their growth on that door frame, how much is it worth? So you got to have somebody in there that's going to sort of quell the emotions and think of this with a clear head.
Yes. Good. I often tell people, they talk about their home, and well, your home is going to be wherever you end up. This is a house. It's a building.
What did I just put out there? I'm not selling you a house. I'm selling you a home. I'm not selling your home. I'm selling your house.
Yeah. And that's a really important message for people to
It really is. It's that emotion. Whenever you get emotions involved, it's very hard to think logistically.
But wherever you live, it could, if you had to live in a studio apartment, not in Manhattan, studio apartment.
I've seen some nice
I'm
ones.
sure in Manhattan. Yes, yeah, in Manhattan.
I'd call one of those home.
My whole house here in Gainesville is probably wouldn't buy me a studio apartment.
It's only by you like maybe the kitchen area
Maybe the kitchen. That's it.
of a studio apartment.
And talking about owning too, when people start this whole process with you, another stressful thing, and I'm sure you run into it with couples coming in and talking to you, is getting the paperwork. It's so stressful, who has this document, who has that document. And people shouldn't stress too much that, well, I can't ask him for that. I'm not going to ask him for the deed. All that stuff is public.
Yes.
It's all out there. You can go on the tax appraisers, the county property appraisers page. You can see whose names everything is under.
Yes.
That's another very important thing for us to know, too. When we're running these numbers and when we're doing this, who is the legal names on the deed?
Yes.
You could have always assumed, and I'm sure a lot of people assume that both names are on the deed.
And they're not.
Or they may assume, well, it's just in my husband's name, and they don't realize they're on the deed too. It's very easy to look.
And often, even if they're not on the deed, it depends one, but if they're not on the deed, it still is a marital asset. Mm-hmm. And it still is, jointly held property. They don't realize it. The other thing that frustrates me often that people don't understand is that there is a deed which talks about ownership, and then there's the promissory note, which we lay people would call the mortgage. And often people think if they get off the deed by giving the other spouse the house, they're going to get off the note, the promissory note, and
or any other liens.
Or any other liens. The IRS, could have a lien on the house.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that people really need expert advice with when it comes time to sell the house.
And it's not that scary. It's just a matter of getting all the paperwork and just having the knowledge and just getting all that stuff prepared. When you're out there thinking, I don't have this, I don't have that, it's all easily accessible, and having a mediator to guide you in the right way and a realtor to help you, telling you what you need. It's just a matter of just getting it all in order.
Yeah. I mean, in Florida, if people earn under $100,000 and they have no children and they have no property, real property, often, not always, but often they can just go to the courthouse and do the paperwork themselves. This county, Alachua County, the person in charge happens to be wonderful and very, very helpful and very, very knowledgeable. But we work in other counties, and I can tell you that in other counties, they don't offer the same level of service that we do here. But, if somebody has a realtor and a mediator, they may be able to do a lot of the legwork themselves with help because they're getting expert advice.
In the beginning, for a new realtor, brand new realtor first getting in the business, the scariest terms for you to hear, two things. One, it's in probate, or two, they're getting a divorce.
Yes.
But then as you start dealing with this and going through these, deals and sales and purchases and whatnot, you realize it's not that scary.
Yes.
It's just a matter of having the paperwork and getting everything in order, and everybody, again, taking the emotions out and looking at everything logistically. And it's really not that horrible.
Yeah.
It's doable. It's doable.
I want to make sure I have everything else. What about living arrangements during the sales process? That often becomes a whole big thing where many times we want one spouse, the spouse that wants to stay in the house, we want them to move out because we're concerned that they will mess up. Sabotage. That's it. I was going to use the word schmutz. They will schmutz up the property, but the better word is sabotage. That they are going to sabotage the property so that anybody who comes to buy it sees, like, I've heard of stories with dog poop in the middle of the living room and other things, or bad smells and etc., so that the house doesn't sell, so that they don't have to move.
Or the one that is in the house doesn't give accessibility to show the house.
Yes.
That does happen.
Yeah.
That does happen.
Yeah, I think we've seen the gambit. We've had a lot of people go through this process as they're going through divorce.
Yes.
So the variety of outcomes is very broad. So, as far as living arrangements, it's always nice. I always try to encourage people, when I get the calls, because we get referrals from divorce attorneys and different people that are trying to help their people have the peaceful. You want this process. Selling real estate is stressful in and of itself.
Yes.
Okay. So when you combine that with the stress and the tension of a divorce situation, I usually spend the first appointment. Usually it's a phone call. So the first phone call that I have with the whoever, whether it's the husband or the wife, sometimes both of them together.
Yes.
Is I'm always trying to assess what their communication, strength is. Like, are you guys talking? Are you friendly? Mm-hmm. Is this a contentious divorce? Like, where are we? Be honest, because we have to have transparency. Oftentimes, it's good to have a male and a female realtor that are working together, because we can go in, and if some instances, the man is like, well, I don't trust the women, and vice versa. They don't trust me because they just, they're hurting and they have scars. And so, so we can go in together and really just take one individually and help them walk through the problems. I always try to make them understand that the better they can be with communicating with each other, and at least in this process, to be peaceable and amicable, it will be so much easier for everyone, and it will help everything go through faster and smoother, because you don't want it to drag on. When homes are on the market for a long time, the longer a house stays on the market, the more contentious everything gets in a normal situation.
Yes.
You add to that divorce stresses and financial woes and everything else. It is better for everyone involved to cooperate and to allow the process to happen swiftly to maximize the outcome from both parties.
And don't weaponize the house.
Don't weaponize the house.
Yeah, they weaponize the children is terrible. And certainly weaponize.
That's something we stay. Thank goodness that's not in our wheelhouse. But
it's my wheelhouse.
I know.
They weaponize the children, and yes, you can.
Which is another thing, too, they need to consider, too, if they're separating and they're selling the home. The children's school.
Yes.
What is that relocation going to look like for the children? Yeah. Do they want to look at new residences that won't upheaval the children? If that is an issue, sometimes it's not an issue. And the kids are at an age where it's an easy transition.
Yeah.
But another reason to have a realtor involved, too, is if they are going to make that transition, somebody to make sure that it's not that big of an upheaval.
Right. That's it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want our listeners and our viewers to know about real estate and divorce?
Do one, don't do the other. And I'm not going to say which one. They have to figure it out.
Yeah, I think the sooner you have the conversation with the agent, the better. So don't wait. Don't try to figure it out on your own. We're not going to, we don't charge someone to come to their house and sit down and talk to them, whether or not they choose us or not.
Yes,
exactly.
The main thing is, have a consultation with someone that you can trust, or, get a recommendation from somebody, make sure the person has experience, in that area of selling homes, especially specifically when it comes to, going through divorce situations. It is a different temperament and communication style that you have to have with people. It's much more sensitive and delicate for most cases. So make sure you have someone that really can, connect with you in that level, understand what you're going through, and help counsel you through the process.
There's going to be a lot of trust involved.
A lot of trust involved.
A lot of trust involved. You have to be very honest in a very raw situation.
Yes.
With your realtor in a situation like this. And, we hear things that have nothing to do with the sale of the house, but we're there.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're there for them, so you have to have trust. You have to trust the realtor. You have to have faith in them, and do your research and make sure.
Yeah, no matter where our listeners are, if they're in Gainesville, they should call the two of you. But if they're not in Gainesville, they should probably talk to a few different realtors before deciding who's the right one.
Yeah.
And, if you happen to have anybody on this call that is not in Gainesville, but they are in a different state, we have contacts with people that we know this.
We meet on a national level.
Keller Williams.
We do.
And outside of Keller Williams, we have contacts with agents all over the country that have experience with these situations that we know. So we'd be happy to connect, your listeners with anyone that's outside of Gainesville. That we wouldn't be able to personally help them outside of Gainesville, but we do have, contacts that we personally know out the area that know how to handle situations like this also. So we've even had a couple of situations before where we got called in for, a divorce situation. And, like I said, we talk, our mission is really to just create a positive and lasting impact in people's lives.
Yes.
Regardless of the house sale. And have had situations before where we got called in because they were going through a divorce situation, but they were amicable, have them both in a room, and it turns into a marriage counseling session. I've had some people choose not to get divorced.
Wow.
At a listing appointment, just because it's, and we just kind of go in and we kind of put the real estate aside and we just have a, another like a marriage counseling session. And I've had it happen where people go, you know what, Craig, we're not going to sell. Good news, bad news. I'm like, okay, what's that? She says, well, the bad news is we're not going to sell our house. I'm like, okay, what's the good news? We're not going to get a divorce. I'm like
wow,
win-win.
There's no bad news there for me. Just so you know.
There's no. Yeah, it's it's like I said, the whole situation. We understand it, and we understand that it's going to have a lot of ups and downs and roller coasters, and we're there for the ride. We are totally in for the ride, So yeah, it's. If any advice I'd give people, it's just or things to look at for is just work with people you trust.
Yes,
that would be the main thing. Work with people you trust, and there are instances where I've talked people out of selling a house and using it as their investment property. We're not there to, you got to sell it. You got to sell. It's like, what would work is if you kept this, got an income, and you guys worked it out, so there's alternatives.
Yes.
It's a conversation. It shouldn't be clinical.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a clinical, we go for a listing appointment or working with buyers. We try never to make it that clinical.
Yeah. I mean, and you use the word customize.
Yes.
So that's really, when someone sells a house, that's really what they need, is someone to come in and help them customize the whole process for them.
That's right.
Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
And your contact information will appear on the screen because I know that Nehemiah at the Gainesville Podcast Studio will put it up there. So bye-bye, everybody.